Imagine standing on the Day of Judgment, surrounded by billions of souls, when suddenly the wealth you spent your entire life protecting begins to speak. The money you saved, the gold you stored, the assets you carefully guarded, they are no longer silent possessions. They become witnesses. They testify about how they were earned, how they were spent, and whether the rights of others were fulfilled within them. In that moment, a question echoes with terrifying clarity. Did you give the portion that Allah commanded, or did you hold tightly to what was never fully yours to begin with? This question is not hypothetical. It lies at the heart of one of the most important obligations in Islam, an obligation that shapes how Muslims understand wealth, generosity, and responsibility. Before we continue, thank you for being here with Islamic Insight Channel. It is always inspiring to see people from around the world coming together to learn about Islam. Let us know in the comments which country you are watching from, and if you love learning about Islamic teachings and wisdom, consider subscribing so you do not miss future videos that strengthen faith and understanding. For many Muslims, the word Zakat is familiar. It is something they hear every year, especially during Ramadan. They know it involves giving a portion of wealth to those in need. Yet familiarity does not always mean understanding. Some people treat Zakat as a yearly financial task, a calculation they complete before moving on with their lives. But the truth is far deeper than that. Zakat is not simply a charitable donation or a social custom passed down through generations. It is a divine command from Allah, a pillar that supports the very structure of the Muslim faith. When Allah revealed the Quran, He did not present Zakat as an optional act for those who feel generous. He placed it among the core responsibilities of every believer who possesses the means to fulfill it. This immediately changes the way we think about wealth. In many societies, money is seen as a symbol of personal achievement. People measure success by what they accumulate, what they own, and what they can display to others. Islam challenges that perspective by reminding believers that wealth is not the ultimate measure of success. It is a test. Some people are tested with hardship and must show patience. Others are tested with abundance and must show gratitude. Both tests are difficult in their own ways, but wealth carries a particularly subtle danger because it can slowly convince a person that they are self-sufficient. Zakat exists to break that illusion. It reminds the believer that everything they possess is part of a trust placed in their hands by Allah. When someone truly understands Zakat, their relationship with wealth begins to change. They stop seeing money as something that belongs only to them. Instead, they recognize that part of what they hold belongs to others. Within their earnings exists a right that Allah has assigned to those who struggle, those who lack basic necessities, and those who find themselves trapped in circumstances beyond their control. By giving Zakat, a Muslim is not performing an act of charity that depends on mood or generosity. They are fulfilling a responsibility that Allah has already written into the structure of their wealth. To understand how central this obligation is, we need to look at the foundation of Islam itself. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, explained that Islam stands upon 5 pillars. These pillars form the core framework of the faith, the essential acts that shape the life of every practicing Muslim. The first pillar is the declaration of faith, the testimony that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is His messenger. The second pillar is the establishment of prayer, the daily connection between the believer and their Creator. The third pillar is the giving of Zakat. After that comes fasting during the month of Ramadan, and finally the pilgrimage to Makkah for those who are able. The placement of Zakat within this list reveals its importance. It stands alongside prayer, fasting, and pilgrimage as one of the defining practices of Islam. This tells us something powerful about the nature of the religion. Islam does not separate spiritual devotion from social responsibility. Worship is not limited to private acts of prayer performed in solitude. True faith must also shape how believers treat the people around them. Zakat becomes the bridge between personal worship and collective compassion. It transforms wealth into a tool for justice and mercy within society. The Quran repeatedly reinforces this connection. Again and again, believers are commanded to establish prayer and give zakat. The two acts appear side by side throughout the scripture, almost as if they are two halves of a single command. Prayer strengthens the relationship between the believer and Allah, while zakat strengthens the relationship between believers and their community. When both are practiced sincerely, they create a balanced life in which faith influences every aspect of human behavior. But the significance of zakat becomes even clearer when we look at the meaning of the word itself. The Arabic word zakat does not simply mean charity. Its root meaning carries two powerful ideas: purification and growth. At first, these concepts may seem surprising. When people think of giving money away, they usually imagine a loss. Yet Islam teaches the opposite perspective. Giving zakat purifies wealth by removing the portion that belongs to others. It cleanses the heart from greed and attachment, ensuring that money does not take control of the believer's soul. At the same time, zakat represents growth. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, taught that charity does not decrease wealth. This statement may appear mysterious at first glance, but countless believers throughout history have witnessed its truth. When wealth is given sincerely for the sake of Allah, blessings enter the remaining portion. Opportunities appear unexpectedly, losses are prevented, and a sense of peace replaces the anxiety that often surrounds financial concerns. This is why zakat is often described as an investment in the hereafter. What is given today does not vanish into nothingness. It is recorded, preserved, and multiplied by Allah. A small act of generosity may grow into a reward far greater than anything imagined in this world. The Quran repeatedly reminds believers that whatever good they send forward for themselves will be found with Allah. Every act of giving becomes a seed planted in the soil of eternity. When viewed through this lens, zakat becomes something far more meaningful than a yearly obligation. It becomes a reminder of who truly owns everything. It becomes a protection against the arrogance that wealth can create. It becomes a bridge that connects the fortunate with the struggling, transforming individual success into collective well-being. And most importantly, it becomes a declaration of faith, a quiet acknowledgement that every blessing ultimately comes from Allah and must be used in a way that pleases Him. This understanding sets the stage for everything that follows. Because once a believer recognizes the true meaning of zakat, they begin to see wealth differently. It is no longer just a personal resource. It is a responsibility, a trust, and an opportunity to earn reward that will last far beyond the short span of life in this world. When the Quran speaks about zakat, it does not present it as a suggestion or a noble recommendation. It comes as a clear command from the Creator of the heavens and the earth. Throughout the Quran, Allah repeatedly places zakat side by side with prayer, almost as if the two acts are inseparable. This pairing appears again and again in different chapters of the Quran, reminding believers that faith is not only about private devotion, but also about public responsibility. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah commands the believers to establish prayer and give zakat, and then He reminds them that whatever good they send forward for themselves will be found with Allah. This simple sentence contains a profound truth that many people overlook. Every act of zakat is not merely money leaving a hand. It is a good deed traveling forward into the future, preserved by Allah until the day when every soul will stand before Him. Imagine a person who gives quietly, perhaps thinking the act is small or unnoticed. That moment does not vanish. It becomes part of a record that no human can erase and no time can destroy. The Quran explains that zakat has a powerful spiritual function. Allah tells the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, to take charity from the believers so that it may purify them and cleanse them. This statement reveals that zakat is not only for the benefit of the poor, it is also for the purification of the one who gives. Wealth has a strange effect on the human heart. Even the most generous people can slowly become attached to what they possess. Money can create a quiet illusion of control and independence, making a person feel secure because of what they own. Zakat breaks that illusion. It reminds the believer that everything they hold in their hands was given by Allah and can be taken away at any moment. By giving a portion of their wealth regularly, Muslims train their hearts not to cling too tightly to the temporary comforts of this world. Another important truth appears when we reflect on how often zakat is mentioned in the Quran. This command was not revealed only once. It was repeated many times because Allah knows the nature of the human soul. People easily remember acts of worship that feel spiritual or personal, but they sometimes hesitate when worship requires sacrifice from their wealth. The repeated command removes any doubt. Zakat is not optional generosity. It is a right that belongs to others within the wealth that Allah has entrusted to someone. When a believer gives zakat, they are not doing a favor for the poor. They are fulfilling a duty that Allah placed upon them. Islam is a religion built upon fairness and balance. Because of that, zakat is not required from every Muslim without exception. The obligation only begins when a person possesses wealth beyond their basic needs. Islam does not burden the struggling or the poor with financial obligations they cannot carry. Instead, the system carefully identifies those who have been blessed with surplus wealth and asks them to share a small portion of it. The threshold that determines whether zakat becomes obligatory is known as the Nisab. This amount represents a minimum level of wealth that must be owned for an entire lunar year before zakat becomes due. If a person owns less than this amount, they are not required to give zakat. In fact, they may be among those who receive it. This system shows the remarkable wisdom of Islamic law. It recognizes that wealth in society naturally fluctuates. Some people prosper while others struggle. By placing the responsibility on those who have reached a certain level of financial stability, Islam ensures that zakat flows naturally from abundance toward need. It also prevents the poor from feeling shame or pressure. The one who is struggling does not have to worry about fulfilling an obligation they cannot afford. Instead, they are protected and supported by the generosity of others who have been blessed with greater resources. Another aspect of zakat that reveals its wisdom is the requirement of time. A person must possess wealth above the Nisab for an entire lunar year before zakat becomes obligatory on that wealth. This condition prevents zakat from becoming a burden on temporary earnings or sudden income that may be needed for immediate responsibilities. It ensures that the obligation applies only to wealth that has remained stable and available over time. Islam does not rush to take from people before their financial situation has settled. It gives space for stability and security before asking for generosity. When someone finally reaches that point and realizes that zakat has become due upon their wealth, something powerful begins to happen inside the heart. The believer is confronted with a choice. They can either cling tightly to their possessions, or they can trust the promise of Allah. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, taught that charity does not decrease wealth. At first glance, this statement may seem to contradict basic mathematics. Yet countless believers throughout history have witnessed the truth of it. Wealth given for the sake of Allah often returns in ways that cannot be measured by simple numbers. Sometimes it returns through unexpected opportunities, protection from loss, or blessings that appear quietly in daily life. The Quran also provides clear guidance about who should receive zakat. This guidance appears in Surah At-Tawbah, where Allah lists 8 categories of people who are eligible to benefit from it. The first group mentioned is the poor, those who struggle to meet their most basic needs. These are people whose financial hardship may prevent them from securing food, shelter, or stability for themselves and their families. The second group is the needy, individuals who may possess something but still fall short of what is necessary for a dignified life. Islam recognizes that poverty has different levels, and both of these groups are deserving of assistance. Another category includes those who are appointed to collect and distribute zakat. This may seem surprising at first, but it reflects the organized nature of the system. Zakat is not meant to be chaotic or poorly managed. In many Islamic societies throughout history, officials were responsible for gathering zakat and ensuring it reached the right people. These individuals dedicated their time and effort to managing the system, and they were supported through the very funds they helped distribute. The Quran also mentions people whose hearts are to be reconciled. This category historically included individuals who were close to accepting Islam or who needed support in strengthening their relationship with the Muslim community. By offering assistance and kindness, the community helped remove barriers and build trust. Islam understands that financial hardship and social instability can sometimes create distance between people. Zakat becomes a bridge that restores connection and compassion. Another important category includes those burdened by debt. Debt can trap a person in a cycle of stress and hardship that affects every part of their life. Islam recognizes the seriousness of this situation and allows zakat to help relieve those who are struggling under legitimate financial obligations. By lifting that burden, the community helps restore dignity and stability to individuals who may otherwise feel overwhelmed. The Quran also allows zakat to support efforts in the path of Allah. This includes causes that serve the well-being of the Muslim community and strengthen the practice of faith. It ensures that resources are available to support beneficial work that uplifts society and spreads goodness. Finally, zakat can assist travelers who suddenly find themselves stranded or unable to return home. Even if they possess wealth in their own land, their immediate situation may leave them vulnerable. Islam extends compassion to them as well. When we step back and look at this system as a whole, its brilliance becomes clear. Zakat is not random charity given without structure or direction. It is a carefully designed framework that addresses many of the challenges a society may face. Poverty, debt, social isolation, and sudden hardship are all considered. The wealth circulating within a community is redirected in a way that strengthens the weak, stabilizes the vulnerable, and reminds everyone that prosperity should never exist in isolation. This is why zakat holds such a powerful place in Islam. It transforms wealth from a private possession into a shared responsibility. It turns generosity into an act of worship. And perhaps most importantly, it reminds believers that their relationship with Allah cannot be separated from their relationship with other human beings. When someone fulfills their zakat sincerely, they are not simply transferring money from one hand to another. They are participating in a divine system that protects dignity, nurtures compassion, and keeps the heart connected to the reality that everything ultimately belongs to Allah. Wealth has always been one of the most powerful tests placed before human beings. Throughout history, people have struggled with poverty, but they have also struggled with abundance. When a person has very little, patience becomes their challenge. They must learn to trust in Allah while enduring hardship. But when a person is given wealth, influence, and comfort, a different kind of test begins. The heart can slowly begin to believe that success comes purely from personal effort, intelligence, or luck. Gratitude may quietly fade, replaced by a sense of ownership and control. This is why Islam places such deep emphasis on zakat. It is not only about supporting the poor, it is about protecting the hearts of those who have been given wealth. The Quran reminds believers that wealth itself is not evil. In fact, wealth can be a blessing when it is used correctly. It allows families to live comfortably, communities to grow, and acts of charity to flourish. However, the danger appears when wealth begins to occupy the center of a person's life. When money becomes the measure of success, compassion begins to shrink. The wealthy may start to view themselves as completely separate from those who struggle, forgetting that circumstances can change at any moment. Zakat interrupts that dangerous mindset. It forces the believer to confront a powerful truth. The wealth in their possession was never entirely there. Every coin earned, every opportunity received, and every blessing enjoyed ultimately comes from Allah. The believer is simply entrusted with it for a period of time. Zakat serves as a reminder of that trust. When someone calculates their zakat and gives a portion of their wealth away, something profound happens within their heart. The act breaks the illusion that wealth belongs solely to them. It becomes clear that part of what they hold actually belongs to others who have been placed in more difficult circumstances. Islam teaches that within the wealth of the rich exists a right that belongs to the poor. This understanding transforms the act of giving. It is no longer seen as generosity alone. It becomes justice. The test of wealth is not simply about whether someone becomes rich. It is about what they do once they have it. The companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, understood this reality deeply. Many of them became successful traders and business owners. Yet their wealth never made them arrogant or distant from the struggles of others. Instead, it increased their sense of responsibility. One of the most famous companions, Uthman ibn Affan, was known for his generosity. During times of hardship, he would use his wealth to support the entire community. His example showed that wealth can either harden the heart or soften it, depending on how it is used. Zakat ensures that every believer participates in this purification of the heart. It is a yearly reminder that attachment to wealth must never overpower faith in Allah. Without this constant reminder, the human soul can slowly drift toward greed without even realizing it. Zakat brings the believer back to balance. It tells them that success is not measured by how much they accumulate, but by how willingly they share what Allah has given them. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, warned believers about the consequences of hoarding wealth and refusing to give its due. These warnings are recorded in authentic narrations found in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. One powerful narration describes the fate of those who possess gold and silver but refuse to fulfill the obligation of zakat. On the day of judgment, those very treasures may be heated in the fire of hell and used as a means of punishment. The Prophet described how the heated metal would be placed upon their foreheads, sides, and backs. This vivid description was not meant to create fear alone. It was meant to awaken people to the seriousness of their responsibility. Wealth in Islam is not neutral. It carries accountability. Every coin that passes through a person's hands becomes part of a record that will one day be reviewed before Allah. A person will not only be asked how they earned their wealth, but also how they spent it. Zakat protects the believer from facing that question without an answer. By giving regularly and sincerely, they ensure that their wealth becomes a source of reward rather than regret. Another narration from the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, illustrates this idea in a powerful way. He said that whoever is given wealth by Allah and does not pay the zakat due on it will find that wealth transformed into a poisonous serpent on the day of judgment. The serpent will wrap itself around the person and bite them while declaring that it represents the wealth they once hoarded. This image leaves a strong impression because it reveals a deep spiritual truth. Wealth that is withheld selfishly does not remain harmless. It eventually becomes a burden that follows its owner into the next life. Yet the message of zakat is not built on fear alone. It is also built on hope and mercy. The same wealth that could become a source of punishment can also become a shield of protection. When believers give sincerely for the sake of Allah, they transform their wealth into a source of light that awaits them in the hereafter. What they gave quietly in this world may stand beside them as a witness in the next. Beyond the personal spiritual impact, zakat also carries enormous power within society. When practiced properly, it creates a system of care that protects the most vulnerable members of the community. Poverty is not only about lacking money. It often brings feelings of isolation, embarrassment, and hopelessness. Zakat addresses these struggles by ensuring that help reaches those who need it most. Families who cannot afford food receive assistance. Individuals burdened by debt find relief. Travelers stranded far from home receive support to continue their journey. This system transforms the structure of society itself. Instead of allowing wealth to accumulate endlessly in the hands of a small group, zakat ensures that a portion of it flows back into the community every year. It becomes a continuous circulation of resources that keeps society balanced and compassionate. The wealthy remain connected to the struggles of the poor, and the poor feel the support of the community around them. History provides remarkable examples of how powerful this system can be. During certain periods of Islamic governance, zakat was implemented so effectively that officials responsible for distributing it struggled to find people eligible to receive it. Poverty had been reduced so significantly that the system began searching for other beneficial ways to distribute the funds. This was not achieved through complicated economic theories or endless policies. It was achieved through a simple command from Allah that believers took seriously. Zakat also strengthens the emotional bonds within a community. When people know that their neighbors care about their well-being, trust begins to grow. The wealthy are not viewed with resentment because their success benefits others. The poor are not abandoned because their needs are recognized and addressed. This mutual care creates unity that cannot be forced through laws or regulations alone. It grows naturally from faith and compassion. Another powerful aspect of zakat is the dignity it preserves. Islam encourages believers to give in ways that protect the honor of those receiving help. Charity should never humiliate the poor or make them feel small. Instead, it should uplift them and remind them that the community stands beside them. In many cases, zakat was distributed quietly and respectfully, ensuring that those receiving it could maintain their dignity while rebuilding stability in their lives. When we look at the world today, we see societies struggling with extreme inequality. Some people possess unimaginable wealth, while others struggle to meet their most basic needs. Islam recognized this challenge long ago and offered a solution rooted in faith and responsibility. Zakat does not eliminate wealth or discourage success. Instead, it places a moral framework around prosperity, ensuring that success benefits the entire community. Through this system, Islam teaches that the strength of a society is not measured only by its wealth, but by how that wealth is shared. A community where the hungry are fed, the indebted are relieved, and the vulnerable are supported is a community built upon mercy. Zakat becomes one of the most powerful tools in creating that mercy. When believers fulfill this obligation sincerely, they do more than transfer money. They reshape the moral fabric of their society. They remind themselves that wealth is temporary, responsibility is permanent, and true success lies not in what we keep, but in what we give for the sake of Allah. There is something remarkable that happens inside the human heart when a person gives sincerely for the sake of Allah. It is a change that cannot be measured in numbers or recorded in bank accounts. It is quieter than that, deeper than that. Zakat does more than move wealth from one place to another. It reshapes the inner character of the believer. Every year when the time arrives to calculate zakat, a Muslim pauses and looks at the blessings that have accumulated in their life. They see the earnings, the savings, the possessions that have grown over time. For many people, this moment could easily become a celebration of personal success. Yet zakat redirects that moment toward humility. Instead of asking how much they have gained, the believer asks how much of it belongs to others. This shift in perspective is powerful because it weakens one of the strongest temptations of the human soul, the temptation of greed. Greed rarely appears suddenly. It grows quietly through small attachments. A person begins to believe that their wealth represents security, that it guarantees comfort, that it protects them from hardship. Slowly, the heart begins to rely on money more than it relies on Allah. Zakat interrupts that dangerous path. By giving away a portion of wealth regularly, the believer reminds themselves that true security does not come from numbers stored in accounts or possessions stored in homes. Real security comes from the protection and mercy of Allah. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, lived this reality in a way that amazed those around him. His generosity was not occasional or hesitant. It was constant and fearless. Those who knew him often described how he would give without worrying about what remained. There are narrations that describe people approaching him for help and leaving with far more than they expected. Yet his generosity did not come from carelessness. It came from a deep certainty that whatever is given for the sake of Allah will never truly be lost. This confidence transformed the way his companions viewed wealth. They understood that generosity does not weaken a person. It strengthens them. Zakat trains every Muslim to follow this example in their own life. Even if the amount given seems small, the act itself carries enormous spiritual weight. Each time a believer gives, they are teaching their heart a lesson. They are reminding themselves that wealth is temporary, that possessions will eventually fade, and that the only lasting investment is what is given in the path of Allah. Over time, this habit begins to shape the personality of the believer. Generosity becomes natural. Compassion becomes instinctive. The heart becomes softer toward the struggles of others. The transformation does not stop with the individual. When many believers practice zakat sincerely, the entire atmosphere of a community begins to change. People begin to feel connected to one another in ways that go beyond simple neighborly relations. The wealthy do not live in isolation from the poor. Instead, they become aware of the challenges faced by others around them. They understand that their blessings carry responsibility. At the same time, those who receive assistance do not feel abandoned or forgotten. They see that the community stands beside them during difficult times. Islam teaches that wealth will never remain with a person forever. One day every individual will leave behind everything they worked to gather in this world. The homes, the possessions, the savings, all of it will remain while the soul moves forward toward its final destination. The Quran reminds believers that on the day of judgment, neither wealth nor children will benefit anyone except the one who comes to Allah with a pure heart. This reminder places wealth in its proper perspective. It is not an ultimate goal. It is a temporary tool. Zakat helps believers prepare for that moment when they will stand before Allah. Every act of giving becomes part of a record that will be revealed on the day when all secrets are brought into the open. Imagine the comfort of knowing that acts of generosity were quietly recorded throughout a lifetime. The assistance given to someone in need, the debt that was helped to be lifted, the food that was provided to a struggling family, none of it disappears. Allah sees every act and preserves every intention. The Quran often speaks about people who will regret the opportunities they missed in this world. It describes how some individuals will wish they had given more when they had the chance. They will wish they had used their wealth in ways that benefited them in the hereafter. But by then, the time for action will have passed. Zakat protects believers from facing that regret. It ensures that throughout their life, they are consistently sending forward deeds that will benefit them when they need them the most. Another beautiful aspect of zakat is how it connects the believer to a long tradition of faith that stretches back through centuries. Muslims today are not the first to practice this obligation. From the earliest days of Islam, believers were giving zakat as a sign of their obedience to Allah. The companions of the Prophet treated it with great seriousness. They understood that fulfilling this pillar was part of maintaining the strength of the Muslim community. When they gave, they were not only helping individuals in need, they were preserving a system that protected justice and compassion within society. Over generations, this practice created a powerful legacy. Communities flourished not only because of their wealth, but because of how that wealth was shared. Scholars, travelers, the poor, and the vulnerable were supported through funds that circulated within society. Mosques were maintained, families were protected from extreme hardship, and people were reminded that they belonged to a community that cared about their well-being. Zakat became a symbol of unity, linking believers together through mutual responsibility. In the modern world, many people speak about economic systems, social safety programs, and policies designed to address poverty. Yet long before these discussions existed, Islam had already established a framework that balanced personal success with collective care. Zakat does not eliminate ambition or discourage hard work. Islam encourages people to earn honestly, to build businesses, and to improve their lives. But alongside that encouragement comes a reminder that prosperity should never lead to neglecting others. When believers give zakat sincerely, they become part of a divine system designed to uplift humanity. The act may appear simple, a calculation followed by a payment, but its impact reaches far beyond the numbers involved. It purifies the wealth of the giver, restores dignity to those receiving help, and strengthens the bonds that hold communities together. Most importantly, it keeps the heart focused on the ultimate purpose of life. At its core, zakat reminds Muslims of a truth that is easy to forget in the rush of everyday life. Everything belongs to Allah. The wealth that passes through human hands is only a temporary trust. Some of it will remain behind when life ends, but some of it can travel forward into eternity through acts of generosity and compassion. The believer who understands this truth does not see zakat as a burden. They see it as an opportunity, a chance to transform temporary wealth into everlasting reward. In the end, zakat stands as one of the clearest demonstrations that Islam is not a faith concerned only with rituals performed in isolation. It is a way of life that connects worship with social responsibility. Prayer lifts the believer toward Allah, while zakat spreads mercy across the earth. Together, they form a balance that shapes both the soul of the individual and the health of the community. When Muslims fulfill this obligation with sincerity and understanding, they do more than give a portion of their wealth. They participate in a system of justice, compassion, and faith that continues to benefit humanity, generation after generation.